أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا والشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل بيته وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الذين جاهدوا فينا لنهدينهم سبلنا وإن الله لمع المحسنين صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Our discussion now for the past 3 nights has been revolving around the reform of the Ummah and talking about the fact that when we want to fix what's happening in the world, when we examine what's happening all over the world, our heart bleeds, of course, we are in pain, we sometimes feel helpless, we sometimes feel like we're out of control, and in the process, we oftentimes search for the right path on what is my duty and what is my responsibility. And being in this part of the world, there's only so much that we can do. But sometimes even that bare minimum isn't done by us. Whether it is to speak out against the tyranny and oppression, whether it is to attend protests and marches that are organized in the city, whether it's to support the leadership or the mara'ajeen who are out there at least vocally speaking out against what's happening all over the world, or whether it's at work or at school possibly debating, discussing, talking about these issues with those who may not have enough information. All of these things are the bare minimum that can be done during these trying times for the Ummah. However, our focus for the past 2 nights has been about the individual. We mentioned that for us to first fix the Ummah, we must first fix our communities, and then our families, and then of course our individual selves as well. We mentioned that a failed community, a failed family, and by extension a failed Ummah, is a failed Ummah due to the fact that the individuals that are comprised of that community or Ummah are also in their individual lives failures. Their direction towards Allah, their piety towards Allah is not sufficient. In fact, it's very superficial, for lack of a better word. It's very zahiri, it's very outer. Nothing truly penetrates deep inside of that ibadat that they might be performing. And so we talked about the idea of us first initially fixing ourselves and then fixing those around us. And that essentially is one of the main components towards the arrival of our Imam, that if we are wishing for him to come, if we are begging for him to come, and of course we are, then he needs the individuals who are strong in their Iman. We talked about very dangerous historical personalities last night that were with the Imams, walked and talked with the Imams, saw the Imams, witnessed their greatness. But When it came time for them to display their commitments, their loyalty, they were nowhere to be found. And today, as promised, we speak a little bit about practical steps to ensure that this bubble we talked about last night, the bubble of superficial worship, the bubble of, look, I pray salat, I fast, I give my khums, I do this much, and then we fall into what's called complacency. We talked about that 2 nights ago, those who were with me. We talked about the fact that sometimes we worship Allah out of habits. We worship Allah out of the fact that it's an everyday thing, everyday occurrence. This idea of a mi'raj, the idea of an ascension, this idea of moving up towards Allah through this worship, I really don't feel that. I don't get it. So we do what we can within the bubble. And if the fitna and the test of this era that we live in is asking us to break that bubble, we can't do it. All I know is the bubble I've created for myself. How do we ensure that we do what the right thing is to do when the time is right? It's one thing to know haqq, it's one thing to know what's right. Right now, mashallah, everybody in this room knows what's right and what's wrong. At least you should now. By now, it should be very obvious who the enemies of our Imam will be and who the supporters of our Imam will be. If there's still confusion, you gotta check yourself and make sure that your eyes aren't closed. Knowing it is one thing. When it comes time for you to display it, that's a whole different ballgame altogether. Many, many, many people have failed in not the identification of the haqq, but the displaying and the defending of that haqq when the time was right. There were people who gave bay'at to Ali and Ghadir and were responsible for shedding his blood in Kufa. There are people who knew full well who Hussein ibn Ali was, reminded them time and time again. They'd respond saying, of course we know who you are. You are the beloved grandson of our holy prophet. And yet they behead the man. Many individuals in history are like that. How do we avoid ourselves from falling into those traps? Let's examine 2 very important factors tonight, inshallah, with your help. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let me also recognize at this moment, if I can very briefly, the efforts and the work of all of you. Alhamdulillah, my first time here in Dearborn. This is my 9th day. And I've gotten to know a few of you. And it's been an honor, and everything I've heard about you has been absolutely true, alhamdulillah. You are a vibrant group. You are a passionate group. You're a group that requires some leadership and some direction. But it is the passion that I see sometimes in all of you, especially those who are sometimes responsible for putting something like this together, that the Imam needs. The Imam needs that passion. The Imam needs that love. The Imam needs people to not sit at the home and wait for some leader to come and save the day, but rather say, you know what, if we don't have that leadership, that's fine. Until that leadership arrives, let us do what we can to prolong and to preserve the mission of the Imam. May Allah bless all of you. It's fantastic. And to see young guys and young sisters like this, it's for me motivation. It's for me a cause of encouragement. And alhamdulillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you. I'm honored and privileged that all of you allowed someone like me to spend these days of Arbaeen with all of you. It's been a short 3-lecture series. Inshallah, in the future it'll be longer. But at least in these past 9 to 10 days, I was able to get a little bit more encouragement, and the future does seem a little bit more brighter than it did before I got here. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Two factors of many factors that need to be discussed, but because we don't have time, 2 factors. Number 1, a man approaches our 7th Imam, Imam Qadim alayhi salatu wassalam. And he begins to complain to our Imam about his situation. His lack of money, the stress he has no job, he has to feed his family. He's having a tough life. Things are never easy for me, Imam. Begins to complain to the Imam, and the Imam listens. There are always those individuals who, when you see someone like that, especially during the Imam's times, they would come and instead of, gaining some knowledge from the Imam, they just unload on the Imam their problems. Sometimes they present themselves like they are the only ones right now who are facing difficulty. The Imam, after he's done, prays for this man. It's a beautiful gift. It's a dua from the Imam. From an infallible, ma'soom Imam, you get a dua. What more do you want? But the man continues to complain about his state. It wasn't sufficient with the dua of the ma'soom. When he was done for a second time, the Imam says something very beautiful. He says, you know what the problem is with you? You are seeking the impossible. You're searching for ultimate happiness in this world. You're seeking contentment in this world. You're looking for serenity in this world. And these two terms, happiness and the dunya, contentment and the dunya, serenity and the dunya, are oxymorons, antithetical, opposites. They're an impossible pairing. What you cannot find in this world is what you seek from this world. And that's your downfall. Sometimes you and I fall to that exact same trap. Now, I'm not here to paint a hopeless picture, but I'm here to paint a real picture for all of you. That ultimately true happiness does not exist in this world. It can't exist in this world. Now, you'll sit there and tell me that I know people who are happy on the outside. I look at them, I look at their lives, and they seem happy. Great job, great salary, huge house, beautiful car, white picket fence, a great spouse, 2 kids, 3 kids, all well behaved. And to me, they're happy on the outside. And sometimes what ends up happening is that we look to 10 other people wishing that we had their life. We envy them. We sometimes wonder, what did I do wrong that I couldn't get this life? And what we don't understand sometimes is while you are looking at 10 other people's lives wishing that you had their life, there are 10 other people looking at you wishing that they had your life. It's all relative, guys. There's no absolute happiness in this world. And the trap of the dunya that sometimes we fall into strips our ibadat from any talk of ascension. Because we do things, we do it for this dunya. I'm praying salat so I can get a raise in my job. I'm fasting, I'm doing some extra worship, maybe I'll have the respect of the people in this world. If you don't do things for the akhirah, it becomes superficial, watered down, thinned out, stripped of its essence, a hollow figure. Because sometimes the reality is, and the example I used in Zainabiyya a few nights ago, I'll use here as well, it's a new crowd. We get stuck and we get trapped and we get distracted and pulled in by the false idols of this dunya. And sometimes we actually convince ourselves that person A, family B over there, they're happy. I'm sure they're happy. They're happy for this reason. And the reason why we believe they're happy is the primary reason why they're miserable sometimes. Because when you search deep inside of a family or individual that might on the outside look like they have everything, you'll know that they're equally as miserable in this dunya as you are. They're equally going through that test as you are. This world wasn't meant to give us contentment. This is not where you find this. The result of the test of this world is serenity in the hereafter. Wait for that over there. Work for that over here. Don't look for it here, work for it here. And you'll end up giving it or getting it in the hereafter. The example I use is, we're in a university right now, right? U of M Dearborn. Some of you I know might attend here. The example I used, and those of you who are there with me, you can excuse my repetition for a moment, was the examination hall example. My first year university class, I remember, psychology. I was one of 400 students. I came from high school where the average class size was 30, maybe 25. Quite a big jump. I want you to imagine a first year university student. It's finals week. You're entering into the final examination hall. Now, to host 400 students at one time, you need a very massive hall. And sometimes, at least in my day, the university would choose the most beautiful auditorium, naturally, to hold such a large crowd. Okay? And usually the auditorium is a very attractive auditorium. All the bells and whistles are in there. I want you to imagine a first year university student walks into the examination hall. First time in the auditorium, and he's wowed, taken back. Looks around, he thinks, oh my goodness, what a hall this is. What a beautiful hall this is. Look at the carpet, look at the pin on the wall, look at the projectors, the smart boards, look at the stadium seating. This is beautiful, the chandeliers, the engraving. You are completely in awe. And for half an hour into the exam, you are consumed with the examination hall. Until your prof comes and taps you on the shoulder and says, look, buddy, you're not here to be wowed by the examination hall. You're here to write the exam. Write the exam and go. Don't waste your time being wowed and distracted by the examination hall. Sometimes we are wowed and distracted by this dunya. Until someone should come and say, look, you're not here to be wowed by the dunya. You're here to write the exam. Write your test and move on. If you pass the test with flying colors, there are 1,000 auditoriums on that side waiting for you to be wowed by. The trap of the dunya, we have to be very, very careful about. And yes, I need some more time to elaborate on what the dunya is, what the akhirat is. Many of us believe it's a physical world. It's not. Alama Majlisi rahmatullah alayh, Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayh, both of them, in Imam Khomeini's 40 hadith, talks about this idea, I believe in hadith number 13. He says, the essence of the dunya and the akhirah are not physical worlds. Rather, they are states of existences. Meaning that those collective components that pull you away from the dhikr of Allah is called the dunya. And those collective ideologies that pull you towards Allah is the akhirah. What a beautiful definition that is by our ulama buzurgan. Amazing. It's not a physical world. It's not this concept where someone's believed that as long as I'm in this world, I'll be miserable. No, if you allow yourself to be engulfed by those things that pull you away from the path of your purpose in this world, then that, of course, is going to be your downfall. How many times have we seen a little bit of the waving of the dunya and people have sold out their soul? That's why where Islam draws the line is not for you to have a nice house or a nice car or clothing from head to toe. No. A mu'min, a mu'minah should be presenting themselves on the outside to be beautiful, on the inside as well to be beautiful. Well, of course, within the sharia limits. Where Islam draws the line is zuhud, is detachment from the world. That yeah, you might work hard to become a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, an accountant, an entrepreneur. A lot of you, mashallah, are pre-med in this room, pre-law. You guys have your future in terms of your secular education laid out for you. That's great, fantastic. The passion for education I see sometimes in this country is better than my country, that's for sure. And with that, with all that effort, all that mehnat, all of that struggle that you're doing with your school, comes a nice salary, comes perks. I'm not asking anybody here to live in a shack of a house and drive a clunker of a car, no. This dunya is yours. Allah created this dunya for you. And He created you for Him. But where Allah and where the Ahlul Bayt draw that red, solid, dark line is zuhud. Don't attach yourself to these things. Don't place a price on them higher than their actual value. That's why Amir al-Mu'mineen says if you're going to sell your soul out in this world, it better be for something that's higher than Jannah in price. Because that's where you should be headed, is towards heaven in the hereafter. If you find anything in this world better than Jannah, an everlasting abode of peace, then sell your soul out, no problem. If you don't find anything, don't sell your soul. Why can't we break our bubble sometimes? This dunya has us in its clutches. Sometimes I know individuals, and perhaps I shouldn't share this with you, I know individuals in the Hawza, when you ask them why'd you come here, what's your story? You know, we see individuals sometimes from 90 plus different countries in the Hawza and Qom. We're intrigued, right? It's one thing where, you know, he's from Lebanon or she's from Iraq or, you know, he's from Pakistan. That's quite obvious sometimes. But when you see a couple of guys from China, from Russia, from Bangladesh, from Chile, you get intrigued. I want to hear your story, man. How'd you end up here? Sometimes, and I say this with inshallah, sometimes they tell me that I am here to study for a little bit and go back and begin tabligh worldwide. I want to be an international scholar. I want to have the fame and the fortune of the international scholars before me. I want my name plastered all over Twitter and Facebook, right? I want memes made about me. I want images made about me, yeah. I want these action shots to be stilled. I want these intro videos to be made about me, where Hassan Salami is reciting a beautiful poem. Why not me? Why Sheikh Mehdi, right? Yeah. I want this, that's what I want. It's unfortunate that you are out in the Hawza in Qom, in the beautiful piece of heaven this dunya has to offer. And even in that, you find the dunya in here somewhere. Be careful, this trap is vicious. How many traditions have you heard about Amir al-Mu'mineen divorcing the dunya? Talking about the beautiful python, slippery and smooth on the outside, spewing venom from the inside. How many times have we heard it? And sometimes, you know, me growing up, I would hear it. I'm like, yeah, it makes sense, whatever, this and that. I don't get it, the snake idea. As I got older, I understood. You got a little bit of fame, a little bit of fortune, a little bit of name, all of a sudden your chest is out to here. Your head's in the clouds. You're 1 inch above the ground. Until sometimes, once in a while, God sends you a message and brings you down. We have stories of individuals who believed that they were invincible, and God sometimes would destroy them. With what? With wind, with water, with small pebbles from the sky. Not with major giant armies, no. Not with strong individuals, no. Sometimes a sandstorm, sometimes a flood, sometimes birds in the sky dropping small pebbles on elephants. Just to kind of make sure that you understand who you are. Take it easy. Let's bring you back down to earth a little bit. The trap of the dunya Let's be careful. The people of Kufa, very, very quickly. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I mentioned a few nights ago, sometimes our misconception is that if a group of people lack the basirat or insight during a certain portion in history, they are like that generally. Not the case. I talked about the fact that the people of Kufa during the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen was all he had. 12,000 people came from Kufa to Basra to defend Amir al-Mu'mineen in the war of Jamal. But then we have those same individuals from Kufa during the time of Imam Hussein. I mentioned to you 12,000 letters across 15 days, handwritten, a letter factory going out, day in and day out. All night long, they're writing letters. They're being told by the heads of their tribes, don't write a letter to Hussein ibn Ali unless you're ready to defend the man. Don't waste his time, don't waste my time as the head of your tribe. Letters were written. This revolution was stirring in Kufa. Muslim arrives in Kufa. 12,000 letters became 18,000 people for bay'at. Yazid gets news of this. The governor of Kufa at that time, Nu'man ibn Bashir, was not strong enough to squash this government. Or this revolution, sorry. Yazid sends Ubaydullah into Kufa. Look at the conversation between Yazid and Ubaydullah. He says, Ubaydullah, you go to Kufa with whoever you have with you. I'll send the army from Syria and squash this revolution that's about to start in Kufa. Ubaydullah's response, Allahu Akbar, he says, Yazid, keep your army with you. I'm not walking to Kufa by myself. I'm going to walk into Kufa by myself. Not an entourage, not an army, not a security team, not even a weapon. I'm going to gallop on my horse into this 18,000 so-called revolution, and I'm going to turn them against the very men they wrote letters for. Save your army. I don't need your army. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad enters the city of Kufa with a niqab, with a veil on his face. And the books tell us that when the Kufis saw an individual coming on a horse, they believed him to be Imam Hussein. They gathered, 1,000 of them gathered, 1,000 of them gathered to welcome the Imam. Okay? Some say they even gave his hand. They gave their hand ready to say, look, we are so ready that even before you come, my hand is ready for bay'at for you. The man comes on a horse, unveils himself to be Ubaydullah. They look at him and they turn around and they back away and they walk back to their homes. Do you understand that? This was a man sent by Yazid to squash the very revolution that you want to begin. If all of you took a shot at him, he would have been dead. 1,000 of you, one man, not a weapon, not entourage, no army, no security, nothing. Him and his horse walked right through you guys. You did nothing. Like, oh, it's not Imam Hussein, okay, let's go home. Turn around, went home. What does that tell you? There's a whole mentality back then that needs to be discussed beforehand. I don't have time. It's enough to know they were not calling Imam Hussein to be their wali and imam. They were calling Imam Hussein to once again restore the greatness of the Kufans in Kufa. You know that when Amir al-Mu'mineen picked up his government and made Kufa the capital of his Islamic empire, there are certain perks that come along with that. As I mentioned a few nights ago, Yazid destroyed all that. They came to fill the pockets once again. That's why Imam Hussein says these people are the slaves of the dunya, the abid of the dunya. That's all they are. And in that group were some of the more senior ones. But let me also make this one point that I've made in a house discussion last weekend, because some people will have a problem with what I say right now. And will say that, oh, Sayyid, you are actually proving the point that Shias killed Imam Hussein in Karbala. Right? The one thing that sometimes our non-Shia individuals tell us, that you guys are crazy. You guys cry over the death of Imam Hussein, but you're the ones that killed him. How do we answer that? Those of you who love to debate on social media, how do you answer that? You guys debate the most ignorant people in the world. I don't know why. Sometimes you guys take on the most takfirs of the takfiris. They'll never understand your cause. There was not a single Shia amongst the qatilin of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein on the day of Ashura. Not one Shia was amongst the 30,000. Fighting beside the Imam, fighting with the Imam doesn't make anybody a Shia of that Imam. People had their different agendas. If you want to understand who a Shia is, you look at the history of Karbala. On the 7th or the 8th of Muharram, when Sayyidah Zainab is seeing thousands and thousands and thousands come from Kufa, she approaches her brother and says, is there nobody that you can ask for help? Is there not one person that will come and help us? Because every single time there's news of a tribe or a group coming towards Karbala, she would have a little bit of hope that maybe the people of Medina, of Mecca, of Kufa had a little bit of an awareness awakening, and now they're flooding towards Karbala to save their Imam. When she sees that that's not possible anymore, she asks Imam Hussein, is there no one that you can call? He says, I have one individual in Kufa that I can call. He writes a letter to Habib. Who was Habib? Habib ibn Madahir, during the time of the Holy Prophet, he is giving a khutbah, a sermon. During the khutbah sermon, there are some kids playing in the back. After the sermon is done, he calls one of his companions, says, do me a favor, the son of Madahir is in the back playing, call him towards me. Habib, a very young Habib, comes to Rasulullah. The Prophet picks him up, kisses him, hugs him, lets him go. The companions ask him, Ya Rasulullah, with all due respect, there are other kids playing there too? He says, you didn't see what I saw in Habib. He said, my Hussein was also playing with them as well. Wherever my Hussein went, the son of Madahir would pick up from the footsteps of my Hussein, the khak, the dirt, and put it on his head. When Imam Hussein wrote a letter to Habib saying, your Mawla is calling you. I need you now, I'm in Karbala. Imam Hussein had 12 flags ready on the day of Ashura. He handed them out one by one to his companions. There was no answer yet from the letter. He held on to the 12th flag. And there were some companions who didn't have a flag. They'd say, Ya Rasulullah, I don't have a flag. Would you mind? I would be honored to carry one of the flags. He would hold on to that flag and say, this is for my Habib. He's on his way right now. They say when Habib arrived in Karbala, there was for the first time a sense of rejoice in the camp of Abu Abdullah, to the point where the sound of that enjoyment reached the ears of Sayyidah Zainab. Sayyidah Zainab asked Fidda, can you find out what happened outside? She says, Sayyidina, Habib is here. She says to Fidda, go and send Habib my salams. Fidda goes to Habib and says, Habib, the daughter of Fatima sends her salams to you. Habib fell on the khak and the sand of Karbala, picked up the dirt on his head. He goes, what has come over the Bani Hashim, that this day has arrived where someone like Sayyidah Zainab is sending salams to a Haqir like Habib. The one who gives a little bit of umid and hope to the Ahlul Bayt and the Imams is called a Shia. The likes of Habib ibn Madahir are called a Shia. Don't fall into those traps where you guys kill Hussein and you guys mourn for Hussein. Let's define what a Shia first is and then go from there. So the idea of the trap of the dunya. We have to be very, very careful. In that trap, like I said, I'm not asking anybody here to not be successful. Be successful. Don't attach yourself to that success. Don't sell your soul out for that success. Don't cut off ties with your family for that success. Don't change your principles for that success. And very, very quickly, number 2 is our relationship with our a'mal. How do we see our deeds? Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam, so many of you, mashallah, the day of Arbaeen, you give me a salawat like that. I don't understand that. Give me a nice salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, please. Yeah. Muhammad wa'ajjil farajahum. Ahsant. Our 4th Imam in Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq, Dua number 20 and Sahifa. 22 different qualities of a muttaqi, pious individual. One of them is that he does istiqlal al-shar wa istiqthar al-khair. It's baraks. Istiqlal al-khair, istiqthar al-shar. His khair that he does is qalil. His shar that he does is akthar, is kathir inside of him. Meaning what? He minimizes the good that he does and exaggerates the mistakes that he makes. He accounts for the good deeds as nothing. I should be doing that, but he kills himself over the mistakes that he makes. Sometimes people like me have it switched. We do a little bit of good, we have to announce to the entire world. We do constant bad, we justify it. How do we view our own actions? Do we compare our actions to others? If we do that, it's a trap. What's that trap? That trap is usually we compare our actions to people who we know are a little bit less religious than us. Usually we compare our actions to those who are less pious than us. Why? To pump up our own ego. Whereas Hadith says that no, if you want to compare with somebody who is a little bit higher than you and say, I want to be like that person. But that's not what we do sometimes. To justify our mistakes and more importantly, to make us feel like we are a true Shia, a true mu'min. We actually do this idea of presenting a false image of our own deeds, not to anybody else, to ourselves. And we count and list all the greatness that we do, and we kind of say, yeah, well, sometimes I do make mistakes, but Allah is Rahman, Allah is Rahim, mashallah. I'm not infallible, I'm a fallible individual. Allah didn't create me to be a ma'soom. Fine. Let's be careful with that. If we do everything we can to hide our defects, we should do everything we can to hide our good deeds as well. It's a very important point in the world of akhlaq, a very important point. That we go above and beyond to make sure that nobody understands what I do behind closed doors when I make a mistake, when I commit a sin. Above and beyond. We beg people, please don't tell others what you saw. If we did that much scrutiny when it comes to our good acts that we do behind closed doors, when no one sees it but us and Allah, then we'd be somewhere else right now. The pumping of our ego, the elevation of our deeds to a level that they don't deserve to be there, I'm sorry. These are all traps within us. Be careful. We should never be to a point, I'm sorry, where we are satisfied with the amount that we do, ever. I think I said this here or at Zanabiya. There are people, individuals who come to me and tell me, I know, Sayyid, the amount that I do, I'll be in heaven. There's no way that God will punish me. It's not possible. These are satanic whispers inside of you. Be careful. However much that we do, it's never enough. Always building towards a different level. So 2 traps here tonight in my closing discussion to all of you. And that is that if we want to make sure that we present ourselves as the best possible individual to not only work towards the reform of the ummah, have your social activities, be socially and politically active. Don't stop with that. That is its own right. But side by side with that, you also have to build your individual reform and individual piety as well. You rise up to crush the oppressor on the outside, and you rise up to crush the oppressor on the inside as well. It has to be a parallel movement. Otherwise, God forbid, and we've seen this, that sometimes those that we lead towards a path will end up being the closest companions of the Imam, and us who taught them will be on the other side facing the Imam, God forbid. That's a very scary thought. I taught you everything you knew. You took my teachings and applied it, and now you're a soldier of the Imam. I was left with simply giving you lip service. I never let it actually resonate inside of my deeds, and now the student is the Imam's soldier and the teacher is the Imam's enemy. How many times have you seen this? Many, many times. To protect yourself from that, 2 points, and then iltimas dua. Number 1 is the trap of the dunya. You guys are young, vibrant, passionate, intelligent, smart, educational, pious individuals. And people like you, shaitan creates plans and creates movements against. He doesn't like people like you, and will throw everything at you to pull you off the path. And the one thing that is the most attractive to the youth nowadays is the dunya. Identify your dunya and try to avoid it. And number 2 is examine that relationship between you and your a'mal, your deeds. How do you see your own deeds? We are quick to judge the deeds of others. How quickly are we to judge our own deeds? We are quick to scrutinize the deeds of others. Do we scrutinize our own deeds to that extent as well? If not, it's hypocritical, and that's going to be our downfall. In these days of Arbaeen, the return back of the Ahlul Bayt towards Karbala, the fact that it is the announcement of the victory of Imam Hussein, the day of Arbaeen is the victory of Imam Hussein. 21 million are right now in Karbala. Every Husayniyah, every masjid, every corner of the globe right now is chanting, Labbaik Ya Hussein. Everywhere you go, all over social media, every news report. The fact that Western media refuses to cover that, that's their issue. They cannot deny the fact that everyone is moving towards this idea. Imam Sadiq says, may Allah have mercy on the cheeks that rub themselves against the body of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. 21 million are moving towards Jannah, for the single opportunity of rubbing one cheek on the body of Imam Hussein. This love, this passion, this movement is our victory, but is also our motivation to destroy the Yazid of our time. What Imam Hussein planted on the day of Ashura, our Imam will complete with his zuhur. In the meantime, we have to keep going. Keep unmasking, exposing the Yazid of our time. In the process, build that Husseini energy inside of us. Only then do we have the right to say, وَعَجِّلْ فَرَجَهُمْ, inshallah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to accept this qaleel ibadat, inshallah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is so much tyranny, there is so much injustice all over the world. We have one Hussein who is in ghaibat right now. We ask you, Allah, to hasten that reappearance of our Hussein. And just like Imam Hussein was his ashab, the imam, let him be for his ashab, meaning us, also our imam, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.